What's going on, STR Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here as always with my main man and brother from another, Mr. Emanuele Pani. What's up, E?
My brother, so good to see you. I don't know if you guys can see, I got my little light behind me. Where is it? This way. And little by little, I'm trying to get my setup to be as crisp as Mike's. And it's always this, like, it's always a process, bro. There's so many things that you can learn and like geek out on in terms of like understanding how to do things better, how to be better at what you're doing, and just like learning things. And I always think about how funny, because if you ask one of my teachers in high school, they would tell you I wasn't a great student. And instead, if I look at how I would describe me as a person, I love learning. It just wasn't the right things. It wasn't the right people, right? But anyways, so yeah, hopefully over the next couple of months, we're gonna get this even more dialed in. So we'll continue to get you guys better and better quality content that you can watch on YouTube as well. That is kind of like one of the goals that we have. So I'm excited for that. And I'm also excited for our guest today.
This was a fun one, man. He was supposed to speak at WealthCon, and then he had some family things come up, couldn't make it, and we've known each other like virtually, like through connections, but this was the first time we actually connected. So we've got I would call him the OG of midterm rentals, Jesse Vasquez, on the show today. And it was an awesome conversation. Hearing his journey, he's 80% direct bookings. Yes, 80%. And he shares his strategies for doing that, which was super insightful. But then we also went deep on the family side of things too, of creating that balance when you have this drive to build and do all these really cool things. How do you cultivate balance, as E likes to say? And we went deep on that. And so you're going to get some tactical and some a little more broad mindset slash life balance advice from somebody that's operating at a very high level and doing some very cool things. And it was just an overall fun conversation. Definitely my top 3 podcasts that we've recorded. You guys are in for a treat today. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Jesse Vasquez to the show. What's up, SCR Nation? We are back today with a very special guest, somebody that I've been following for a long time, and he's carved out a niche for himself. I know him as like the go-to MTR guy. He's been dominating that space for a long time. Today, we've got Mr. Jesse Vasquez on the show. Jesse, what's up, man?
What is up, guys? I'm super pumped to be here. This is a long time listener to your guys' pod for a while. There was nothing out there in the short-term space for years, and now there's all kinds of them, but I still come back and listen to you guys on a regular basis. So it's pretty cool to be on a podcast that I listen to on a regular basis. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Dude, our pleasure, man. I feel like this is long overdue. Long overdue.
I know, right?
I'm glad
sure.
glad that you're here. But for the folks that don't know you, I'd love to kind of rewind the tape here and go back to the beginning of your journey on how you got into real estate, and then we'll catch up to where we're at now.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I accidentally got into real estate, and I'm going to give you guys the backstory of what I was actually introduced to in real estate. We always hear the cool stuff about, like, everybody's making money and I make, a couple $100 a door. I'm going to take you guys back to 1989. All right. So I don't know if you guys are old enough. Mike, you old enough for this? I don't know. Maybe.
Depends what month you're gonna go to, because if it's before
Dude,
September, I'm not there. But
he wasn't there yet. So it was summer. So I remember it being hot as heck. I was sitting in the back. Have you guys watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation? I bet you have. Both of you guys have. Okay. You know that station wagon, the wagon that they're riding in all the time, looks like wood. So my mom's like, hey, we got to go somewhere right now. You got to hop in the car. And it had these velvet seats. And I remember this specifically with summertime, because where I live in Turlock, California at the time, it was like 110 degrees. And when you sit in velvet that's that hot, it's not comfortable. I remember running my hand across it. My parents were arguing in the front seat. And just so you know, like, my parents never argued ever. This is the first time I felt that them arguing, where it was like a little bit like, dang, my parents are arguing. This is kind of scary. I remember peering out the window. I didn't know where we were going, because my mom rushed me to get in the car, in the wagon. And we ended up at the county, the court. And my mom's like, sit in the back. I walked into court. So if you guys can think of like my cousin Vinny or something, doors open up. There's people kind of sitting around. There's a judge in the middle, and there's a woman on the left. And my parents walk up. My mom says, sit right here. And then she walks up. Her and my dad sit at the 2 front seats up at the front. And I remember sitting in the back, just being like, man, nobody told me anything about this. And the judge stood up. Everybody had to stand up. I didn't know. And it ended up being a position where my parents allowed a woman to stay at their house for 6 months without paying rent. And I grew up in a super Catholic household where my dad was always like, what about their kids? What about this? What about that? Parents came here as immigrants, were able to build a pretty successful real estate business. But over the years, I watched them lose it. They weren't good at business. And the reason why I'm bringing this story up to you is because that's what I was introduced to in real estate at, the age of 8 in 1989. Like that's what I knew about real estate. Didn't care about it, didn't think about it, never even thought I never even wanted to be in real estate. And like I mentioned before, you guys, I watched my parents lose properties over the years because of that same exact issue. And there's one thing that the judge said before I move on from the story. As we were getting ready to leave, he said, Mr. and Mrs. Vasquez, this is not the first time this woman's done that. In fact, I seen her here 6 months ago. And before that, I seen her here 2 years ago. So this is exactly what she did. She would go find a landlord that was a good person, take advantage of the person, and then not pay rent, use their kids, and then as the clutch or the crutch, and then eventually move on and do the same thing with other people. Keep in mind, this is back in the 80s. So fast forward to 2015. You guys, I worked in healthcare as a business development manager, which is like a fancy way of saying sales rep. And what I did is I worked for a company that my job was to go into hospitals, and if a patient had fallen, broken their hip, or had some kind of neurological issue, my job was to become friends with what's called a case manager. It's a case manager, which is a nurse that works in a hospital. They handled the discharge of patients. So I had to become friends with them so that they would send a referral to my company for home health and home care and physical therapy, and a nurse to basically assist a person at home while they're transitioning and getting better. Because the hospital doesn't want to pay for that. When they're ready to go home, they do. So that's what I did. My job was to go out and connect with people. I became a manager for basically all of California, from Northern California, San Francisco, all the way down to San Diego. I managed about 40 people over the years, but there was one thing that happened in 2015, and this is what woke me up from everything. Walking in a hospital room floor, and I'm talking about those like dimly lit hospital room floors that are kind of like a yellow tint. You guys ever been one of those? They're like 80s hospitals. They haven't changed it. Everything's still exactly the same. And I'm in California, and everybody says dude and bro and man all the time, which you guys are going to hear me say probably a lot here in this episode. And there was this woman that had this badass accent, and she said things like, don't you know, and isn't he a doll? And I just was like instantly drawn to her, man, because we don't hear that here in California. I went up to her at that nursing station, and I was like, where is that accent from? And she's like, how do you not know? But she said, like, how do you not know? And I'm just like, I don't know, I'm from California, I don't really hear anybody else that's around here. And she's like, I'm from Fargo, North Dakota. And I was like, oh, that's cool, what are you doing here? And she said, her name is Barb, by the way, Barbara. And she said, I'm a travel nurse. I'm here on assignment for 90 days. I'm working at this hospital. And we were on tele floor 3, which is in the hospital 3rd floor. And I was like, cool. Like, where are you staying? And this is right here where my brain opened up to, holy crap, I have an idea for this. She was staying at Motel 6 on 9th Street in Modesto. For anybody that's listening that is from California and has been to Modesto and has been on 9th Street, if you're a clinician, anybody that's working with the public, you do not want to stay in that hotel. It's like the most drug-infested, prostitute-ridden space in the entire city of Modesto. And there's about 300,000 people here now. And I was just like, gosh, like, why are you staying there? She's like, there's nowhere for me to stay. There's no places. Keep in mind, in 2015, like Airbnb was still on the down low. It was still kind of coming up. The smart, intuitive investors were making moves on that end. So I asked her, I was like, how much are you paying a month? Mike, guess how much she said she was paying a month for a crappy motel in Modesto in 2015?
Oh my God.
3,000.
No.
How much?
3,000.
$3,000. You're absolutely right, dude.
Yeah,
I could
that
buy.
might-
Yeah, you're right. It was $3,000. She's like, I'm paying
Yeah.
a little bit over $3,000.
Wow.
And if you do the math, it's $100 a night, right? $100 a night. Do the math on that. Ends up being. She said it was like 80, but every day there was a tax, which Mike, you probably know about all the taxes that are added on that. So she's paying $3,000 a month. I happen to know a buddy of mine that just bought a house in 2015 that was a $250,000 house. His mortgage is $1,200 with principal, interest, all the whole thing. And I remember thinking, like, holy crap, like, how do I buy a house? How do I get a Barbara to stay at my home? And I started seeing Barbaras everywhere. You know, the RAS, reticular system in our brain that like allows us to see all these opportunities. Just like you want to go buy a car and all of a sudden you see a white Tesla and they're just everywhere now. Same thing happened to me. I started seeing these nurses in every hospital from Northern California to Southern California. I asked Barbara, I was like, hey, how do I connect with other people just like you? And she's like, oh, Jess, just go down into the HR department of the hospital. There's a woman named Misty down there and just talk to her. I've been telling her that I need a house for a long time now. She hasn't been able to help me. So if you guys have been into a hospital before, you know you got to have like a badge to get in. You know how they have those little thingies and they badge in everywhere. This is the one thing that changed my entire life, and I want the audience to listen to this. And like, it could be such a subtle thing that you do that will change the trajectory of your life. So this is it for me. I didn't have access to go into the HR department. In fact, I had to wait for a nurse to badge in. The door would open. It was one of those doors that like slowly closes, and right before the last 3 inches, it just like slams shut right away because it's a heavy door. And if you guys can think of like a movie right now, this door opens, nurse goes in, it starts to slowly close, and I'm just like, should I do this? Should I not? I ran up to the door. I stuck my big giant foot in there, and right before it shuts, just boom, shut on my door. Grab the door with my left hand. I open the door and come in, and guess who's sitting there in a chair? A woman named Misty. She had big fat letters on her desk that said Misty. And I just said, hey, I just talked to Barbara on Telly Floor 3. She's staying at Motel 6. Did you know that? And she's like, who are you and why are you in my space? That's exactly what she said. Keep in mind, I was used to rejection. I was used to people saying like, get out of here. Like, I don't want to talk to you. Doctors turning their backs on me. So I just said, I just talked to her and she's been asking me about housing. Are you guys having problems finding housing? And she's like, yeah, but I don't really know anything about you. Like, I'm not going to really give you information. I was like, well, I actually work here. I'm here on a regular basis. This is what I do. I told her like I worked for a home health company, and she's like, oh yeah, I've heard of you guys before. So I connected with her in that moment. Then she told me like, yeah, we've been actually looking for housing for many years. In fact, the hospital used to own down the road, they used to own a complex that had like 20 homes in it, and all the travel nurses and all the doctors that came on residency used to stay in that building. They ended up selling it years ago. She's like, we haven't been able to find housing for the longest time. And I was like, what if I go out and find housing for you guys or get housing? Would you be able to work with me? And she's like, 100%. And we're actually working with a travel company right now called AMN Healthcare. And they're doing a lot of our assignments, all connected with Michael, who's the recruiter for that company. He might be able to help you out. That one action, you guys, is exactly what put me on this podcast with you guys now. And it was just like taking a chance on something, not knowing what the outcome was going to be, seeing the idea and the opportunity, and literally just taking action behind that. And it wasn't even something that I thought about. It just like innately happens, almost like the universe or God, whatever it is you guys believe in, like was like pulling me towards that. And I didn't realize it then, but I do now. So that's my introduction to real estate. I had the ugly stuff, and then I saw the opportunity, and about 60 days later, I bought my first property, and that's a whole story in itself. But yeah, that's how I got in started.
Dude, that's such a good lesson.
Yeah, and I love the story. I love how you said it. And I don't know if anybody else in the audience had that moment as he was telling about the door. The Mission Impossible jingle just came into the back of my mind. So I just saw Jesse inside this hospital with like da-da-da, da-da-da, and then Jesse just sees the door closing and throws like a flip-flop. I'm assuming you're wearing Crocs like all doctors, so you just throw your Crocs in there. That just jams the door. And I mean, imagine this Missy looking like Missy Elliott for some reason. And she just looks at you and she's like, what do you want? What are you doing here? What a beautiful story.
Yeah, and it's that one little tiny thing that most of the people listening to this right now would probably never do that. Never put their foot in the door, never show up in a place that they weren't invited. And sometimes you got to do that stuff to put yourself in a position to be successful. And I think actually most entrepreneurs that are successful do those things consistently daily.
Dude, it's getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Everybody's heard that, but it's so true. And it worked out for you, man. And for the folks that are listening, seriously, like take that in for a second. And fortunately, it worked out for Jesse. It might not work out your first time. I remember driving 2.5 hours to New Hampshire when I was prospecting, building my co-hosting business, trying to get my first deal. Set up the meeting with the lady. Then she realized, like, oh, you want to just manage my house? Like, what are you talking about? Clearly miscommunication. She slammed the door in my face, threw me out after driving 2.5 hours. Like, doesn't always work out. You just got to keep putting your foot in that door over and over again.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward now, man. So you get that opportunity, get your first deal. How do we progress from there, right?
Yeah. My first deal wasn't fun. Let me go through this real quick because I had a job that I was making 200 grand a year. For those of you that are in California, like 2015, 200 grand, that's a beautiful job. I mean, a lot of people make 200K. That's freaking awesome. So I had money, but I was like most people. I think I just read the statistic yesterday. 83% of people live paycheck to paycheck. I, in 2015, lived paycheck to paycheck, even making $200,000 because I went and bought dumb shit. I bought cars that I didn't need. I went and did stuff like that. I was one of those guys. Take my families on trips all the time. We were like waiting for that $5,000 paycheck every 2 weeks, and I'd go and spend it on dumb shit. And hopefully I can cuss on this because it just comes out naturally. So you guys can beep it if you need to. But anyway, yeah, I didn't have cash, man. So I ended up selling. The company that I worked for gave me a car, and I had a Toyota Tacoma. It was a 2012 Toyota Tacoma that saves its resale value. If you guys know about Toyota Tacomas, like they are the Those cars don't lose resale value. I ended up selling that car for an extra 12 grand just to close on my first property. Like, that's how convicted I was. And dude, Mike, my entire family was like, you're freaking the dumbest person I know. You're going to sell your truck. You're going to buy a house just because a nurse said that she needs housing. My mom, my dad, my brothers, my wife, my kids were calling grandma saying, Grandma, my dad's buying a house. Like, then when Mexican grandmas find out about stuff like this, like, they don't mess around. Like, you talked about a shoe earlier. She literally threw a shoe at me. So everybody thought I was crazy. But again, I think that you need to be called crazy from people sometimes. I think that it's an important thing to get called when you're starting out in these things. But yeah, that's how I bought my first property, man. I scraped cash together. I sold a vehicle. I bought that first property and it performed. I had it booked before we even closed on the property, which is pretty cool. So from then it just snowballed, man. I just started buying a new property every year. And what I did is I saved all the income that I was making from those properties, from the contracts that I was getting from the hospital. And the first contract I got was $5,000. My mortgage was about $1,600. So I was cash flowing $2,000. So every year I would have 24 grand. I did not touch that money. And then I used that money again to deploy it towards another property. So at that moment when I started saving, and it started to kind of my brain flipped where it's like, and I was 33 at that time, by the way. So, I always wanted to buy a house, but I never really thought about it. And that was it. I bought an investment property before I even bought my own home. And it all started there at 33.
Damn, dude. So let's fast forward to now. And actually, before we do that, it's really cool because most people that have started in this STR, MTR space, say the last 5-6 years, immediately they go to Airbnb, right? Like this
Yeah.
was early. You didn't even go to Airbnb. You found this connection, went straight to the source and started doing direct bookings out the gate, which that's an OG move right there. So fast forward to now, like what's the portfolio look like? Are you still focused primarily on the nurses, or has that pivoted to like ALE type stuff, or what does it look like now?
Yeah, over the years it pivoted. It always did. Nurses were just my first introduction to the corporate rental, housing market, this is considered, I mean, I am always going to say it's corporate housing at the end of the day. We're working with corporate companies, so it's corporate housing. But the corporate housing companies that we see nowadays, they have hundreds of doors, thousands of doors, and like a little guy like me is not going to be able to compete with them. In fact, I tried to go to one of their conferences recently, and they wouldn't even allow me to have a booth there because I haven't been in that game for 5 or 6 years. What they said. So the cool thing about what I think we're doing now is we're banding a lot of these people that have 1 or 2 properties together, and we're able to actually do corporate housing, but not at that level where they're not going to allow a regular guy in because it's like a good old boys club. And we're able to go after these little companies like AMN Healthcare. But yeah, so it kind of morphed, Mike, from travel nurses. I saw that the companies were paying. I now started going to like construction companies. I started going to ALE. I, in fact, got my first ALE booking from Airbnb. It was somebody reached out to me. This was 2016. And for those of you that are listening to this, you probably have had this happen where a company reaches out and they say, "Hey, my name's Mike. I'm a relocation specialist for CRS housing. I have a family that needs a home, whatever, blah, blah, blah." And you're kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then all of a sudden they book, and it's like that $7,000, $8,000 booking for your house for 3 days. You're like, holy crap. Most people will get that booking and then no longer think about it again after they leave. My thought process was like, how do I get a hold of this company? How do I stay consistent with them? How can I send them Starbucks or drinks or something to let them know who I am and so they remember me? Keep in mind, that's what I did in my old job before. I had to have people that would know, like, and trust me and remember me. So everything that I learned for 17 years, I just transitioned into this exact same business. It's B2B. That's exactly what it is. But we're just doing it more on an intentional route. So yeah, man, I just started building from there. Like I think it's a hard concept to think about, but if you really want to create something sustainable that you don't have to rely on Airbnb, or, you're building your own house on your own land, like you're not having to rely on these platforms to do that. Granted, you want to be on them. I think it's smart to be on them, but right now 80% of our bookings are coming from direct, or the other 20 are coming from Airbnb and things like that. So there's a sense of a freeing sense being in that position that we don't have to rely on those platforms. In fact, I have Airbnb properties and I've lost properties because somebody threw a party, and all of a sudden Airbnb decided to close that property down for X amount of time until they get something else going. So it's cool to not have to rely on or like worry about those kinds of things.
So I'm curious at what point, because again, a lot of the listeners are going to be in various stages, and some of them, and this is fresh because I just did a call with somebody about this yesterday. They're at that point where they're really considering leaving the job, but they're terrified, right? And I feel like most people go through that at some point. So you have all this excitement, this anxiety, this fear. How did you handle that when you're like, all right, I'm gaining some serious traction here. Like, do I make this jump or do I keep the cushy thing and just keep building? What was that mental jujitsu going on for you?
Well, I left during COVID, the Great Resignation, right? So what happened is a guy that I worked with who was about 43 years old at the time, his name was Tony. He died from COVID, and he was a business development manager, which is like a sales rep. And I got super annoyed that my boss put him in a position that was, and this is back when COVID, like I didn't know what was going on. Like I knew this guy that was 40 something years old. He wasn't like overweight or anything. He was like pretty healthy, died from COVID, like literally got sick. I went and tried to go see him. They wouldn't allow me, died of COVID. So I'm like, why is this boss putting me in this position to get harmed? Like he doesn't care. I'm just an employee. Like he's going to send me out in the middle. He doesn't care. Like he needs to get sales in. And this guy is not an essential worker. He's not a nurse, but he was still going out, got sick and died. So at that point, I'm just like, my employees I'm an employee of this company that's making millions of dollars. They can give two craps about me. They don't care about the lives of other people. And at that point is when I realized like I am a slave to this company and I have been for many, many years. So leaving at that time, I was making already pretty close to what I made in my W-2 job. I was making about after taxes and stuff like $10,000 a month. And I was probably doing right around there with my midterm rentals already. So at that point, I'm just like, I'm just going to jam out. And sometimes we're going to be inconsistent. Sometimes we're not. And I just had that energy in me where it's like, I just need to go do something on my own. And if this doesn't work, I always have the ability to come back at this because I'm good at sales. I'm good at this type of role. I've been doing it forever. So I just knew that I had the ability to go back to it for whatever reason. I was 38 years old, right? I'm 42 now when I left my W-2 job. And I thought 38 was like, man, that's it. Like you're done. Like you're not gonna be able to get another job when you're 38. Like how that's gonna be hard to go do it again. But to be honest with you, like I've never felt younger in my life. And that's why I decided to make that move because I can go back. I have the tenure, I have the years of experience. I think so many people get stuck where it's just like, I leave this, I'm not going to be able to get this again. And there's a 99% chance that you will probably get something better than what you were before. But most importantly, you're going to give yourself a shot to build something to be successful that you own, that you can even make 10x the amount of money that you made. I mean, dude, I'm 10xing, 11, 12xing what I made before, which I never even thought in my life I would get anywhere over $1 million ever. Like I never thought that. But yeah, you got to bet on yourself, right? Mike, that's what you guys got to do. You guys have been doing it. You know how it goes.
It was one of the scariest times. And again, my last day was December 31st, 2019, right? So then 2.5 months later, after going full time, COVID hits. And I just remember thinking, because people kept telling me that, like, they're like, you can always go back. And I'm like, I am never going back. I am
Yeah.
never going back. I will figure this out. And once you really hit your stride and get into this, you realize that the safest thing to do is always be in control of your income. And I think a lot of people got that punch in the face during COVID that were just getting laid off, that they thought that they had this safety that doesn't exist. You are a cog in a wheel at a company, like at the end of the day.
Totally, man. You know what's crazy, Mike, about this? Now that we're talking about this, when everything shut down, you and I met on Clubhouse, dude. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Oh yeah.
We were all, and the crazy thing is to look back 4 years ago now, like who's doing the thing that they said they were doing back then and who's evolved and changed and how many people are not doing that anymore or how many people had coaching businesses and are not even around anymore. It's crazy to watch that trajectory, but that being around people like in a room on Clubhouse, that's what also opened my eyes is like, holy crap, Mike's doing this. He left his job and so-and-so left their job or these guys are doing this like full time. And now I'm connecting with all these people all over the US and like, holy crap, there's probably a lot more opportunity for me. So Clubhouse, the pandemic in a lot of negative ways brought a lot of positivity to me. It became that point where I'm just like, I'm going to do my own thing. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. Like I already made that decision. And yeah, it was tough, man. It's scary. Like when you're leaving your W-2 job, especially making 200 grand a year, like I didn't graduate high school either. You guys keep that in mind. Like I didn't even graduate high school. And I don't want to go down that rabbit why I didn't, but let's just say I was doing dumb stuff at that age. I was partying and smoking weed all the time and hanging out with a bunch of skateboard kids. And that was my life was, but I had the ability to be able to have friends that didn't matter who they were. I had that likability, that trust factor very early on. And those skills like changed my life. And what's cool where we're at now is that we can watch these super successful people. You don't have to have the traditional routes of doing things. It's very, very cool to watch. In fact, I had a hard time just sitting at a desk studying. I didn't have it in me, man. And it wasn't my cup of tea. Mike, I'm pretty sure you went to college. You probably have like freaking 5 different degrees. Am I right?
I got
This guy's
alphabet
like
soup
super-
after my name. But it's funny, man. I feel like it actually hurt me more. Like it developed good habits. Like I was very disciplined and I had a good work ethic, but the real world does not work like college. Like, I was so used to getting good grades and getting the data boys and all that, and then you get into the real world, and I was so afraid to make mistakes that it paralyzed me into inaction for years. And then fortunately, I had some mentors that just gave me a kick in the butt and was like, "Dude, you're either gonna embrace this, that you're gonna make mistakes and that's normal, or you're never gonna do anything with your life. You're just gonna sit in that corporate job forever and be wondering what you could have done with yourself." So it was such a mental battle for a lot, and he remembers because he helped me navigate through a lot of this because I was like the perfect student, everything has to be right and perfect. The world doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Yeah. Totally right, man. And yeah, I mean, I started off as a delivery driver of oxygen. So like I was 20, my daughter was born in 2003. That's when I got that job. And there was this dude, I'll tell you guys this quick story, and this will get you to realize where I saw the opportunity. This dude looked just like David Spade. All right. Keep that, like we were talking about movies and stuff. Imagine a door opens up and this guy's hair is like whistling in the wind as he goes into this into the office. And he's like walking around. For those of you that are watching this, he's like pointing at people like this, like shooting guns at them. And they're just like, "Oh, hey Matt, how you doing?" Like, I remember going to my boss. I was like this guy in the corner, and my boss was standing next to me. And I was like watching all this stuff happen. I was like, his name was Fernando. I was like, "Fernando, I want to do what that guy does." And he laughs. He's like, "You don't even have a high school diploma. We only hire graduates in marketing and business that can have those roles." And I was like, damn, like it punched me in the stomach. But I kept bothering him about like, I want to do this, man. I have the opportunity. Like, I want to be like that guy. And they gave me a chance, man. And he was the #1 sales rep in the entire US at the time for this company called Pacific Pulmonary. Back then, this was like 2003. He was doing $1 million working for a company, just being a sales rep. And he had this personality that it was like, he was like David Spade, literally. You guys, he's the most likable guy on the planet. And I was the first person that company ever gave a position to that did not have a college education. And guess what I did in that job?
You crushed.
Killed it. But I became on the President's Club. And after that, they started hiring people that did not have college education because they noticed that the people that didn't have the college education were actually outperforming the people that did. So it's pretty cool. I'm getting goosebumps talking about this right now. I don't know if you guys can see this on my arm at all, but it's such a powerful story. I just knew that I wanted to do something more. Like delivering oxygen was my foot in the door, just same thing that we're talking about now. And it's like, I'm going to push myself to do what this guy does. Rather they say I need a college education, I'm going to still show them and continue to bring it up and at least allow me to have an opportunity. And what happened is that dude, Matt, the David Spade guy lookalike, he gave me all the crappiest accounts that he never got referrals from. So like, if you were to think of like the crappiest accounts, which are like in random cities in the US or in our market, like he got everything. He gave me everything that didn't work for him. And I went in there and still crushed it. So yeah, just a good story of like continue to build and do, even if somebody says you can't, or you don't have the ability or the skill, like if you have that in you to say, yes, I do. And yes, I can, that is the most powerful skill on the freaking planet, is yourself telling yourself that you can. I truly believe that.
I couldn't agree more. And I love all the stories. I love how you tell stories. I think that's such a captivating way of being, which I think is also a reason why you've made friends. I think knowing all stories, it's a great way of making friends, right? What is something that you're working on now where you're having to flex that muscle of, I believe, like I know, like I've been through so many storms and there's a little rain now and it's fine. And I know I'm going to go to where I want to go. What's something that is there now? Like what's a reaching goal that you might have now that you're working
Yeah,
on?
I'm going to be probably picking Mike's brain here in a little bit. And I hate when people say pick your brain. Dang it, I can't believe I said that. I actually want to pick up hotels to do extended stay midterm model and brand it where it's throughout the entire US, where say a travel nurse can go stay. They know they've been there in California.
So you're putting Barb back in a Motel 6 in the corner. Like
Exactly. I'm
that?
putting
You're
way
going
better
full
than that.
circle. You're going full
They're
circle.
not going to be the boring corporate housing.
Barb, no
like we
more
see now.
houses for you. You're going back to your Motel 6 single room.
Exactly. But I want to get corporate companies that are going to say, hey, we're going to book your hotel for the next 6 months and we're going to pay, or next year. And I'm getting a contract up front now. I'll tell you guys a little secret that I know. There's a website called invest.gov. In 2023, there was a bipartisan bill that was passed, an infrastructure bill all over the US. They're sending all these government employees through, I think it's like $3 trillion to go work on how roadways, infrastructure, new buildings. And you can actually see the job sites, how much they've paid, whether it's private money or state money. And all these companies are now going there to do whatever work it is. Like Scottsdale has a bridge that they're putting together. So over the next 3 or 4 years, I have the ability, if I do this the right way, to get these contracts with these companies, have my motel or hotel that takes all those clients in, and we have something that's a little bit different, where now I can guarantee that I'm going to get paid for the next 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, by those companies. And not all of them are government contracts. There's also private money that's going into those things. So going after the companies, finding out those companies are, find the players. How can we solve problems with housing? How much are they paying for hotels? Like, there's a lot of opportunity for us to build in this space right now. And Extended Stay America has been doing this for years. They're the best at this. In fact, I drive by Extended Stay Americas and I take pictures of work trucks at 7 p.m. at night. And the next day, I go and I call those companies and I say, hey, how can I help save you guys money? I saw there was a work truck from Louisiana out there. Can you tell me a little bit how much you guys are paying a month? 9 out of 10 times, I'll get some information. I'll solve a problem for those companies. And I can tell you guys a story about that here in a minute if you want me to. But there's so much opportunity for us little guys that have 1 or 2 or 5 properties to be able to build a substantial portfolio and bring a lot more income in with stability. If you're able to go out there and get yourself a little uncomfortable, make a couple calls and drive by like a stalker at 7 p.m. at night to an Extended Stay America. There's leads that are just sitting in the parking lot, literally.
So good, man.
Do you
So
still
good.
drive a Tacoma? As you drive around and stalking?
No, I sold it. I sold that thing. I got a Raptor now, man. I've upgraded.
Oh, those are sexy.
You and
Yeah.
Bill can go
I love-
Baja on together.
I love
Yeah.
that car.
Me too, man. It's one of my favorite trucks on the planet.
So one thing I want to pivot to as well, and before I do, just one of the things that we're doing on phase 2 of our latest hotel deal, the 27 more rooms that we're building, we're putting in full kitchens specifically for midterm stays, especially in our market, because what I've found over the years is the properties that we have that it really, I don't look at it as a cash cow, but it really protects our profit in slow season. If I can get some of those nurses or corporate stays in there for a month, 2 months, 3 months, even if it's just breaking even, we're not going underwater during those slow months. And it's such a huge opportunity because there's not a ton of them around my market.
Dude, that's so smart. Like, one of the things that I teach is it's the hybrid model. You're doing short term during peak season, and then you're doing midterm during slow season. If you have the ability and your cities and municipalities are allowing that, the smart, intuitive investors like yourself now, what they're doing is they're looking at the last 5 years. And anybody that owns short term rentals, you get these highs and all of a sudden you get these peaks and valleys that just drop hard. An intuitive investor, like, let's just go back, Warren Buffett. Mike will put you in that same category as Warren Buffett right now. What they're doing is looking at their P&L. They're looking at their spreadsheets for January through December. Where's our dips? How can we keep our profit at a margin that still might dip a little bit, but at least we're going to be consistent? Because those slow months will make or break a lot of companies. If you're able to subsidize that and you create an opportunity that will allow you to ride through those seasons and not have a negative cash flow, 100% you're going to come back and you're going to start stacking your cash year after year, because now you're not dealing with the negative, you're not dealing with the peaks and valleys that come with the short-term rental industry and hotel industry. So for me, such a smart move, man, to think about it in the same way. And I think little operators like myself, 1 to 2 to 5 to 10 properties, 20 properties even, can do that exact same thing if you know what your markets are doing and how you can stabilize your properties and not have the peaks and valleys that most people have in the space.
It's treating it like a business, ladies and gentlemen. And we've been saying this for years, right? It's not just throwing a listing on Airbnb, and if it doesn't book, throwing our hands up and saying, "Wah, like, why isn't this working?" Like, Jesse's driving to extended stays and then cold prospecting these leads to see if he can generate business. That's marketing. That's like grassroots marketing right there. Right. So
It's not driving for dollars, driving for contracts, Mike. There it is.
There it
Driving
is.
for contracts.
I like that. That's gonna be a bumper sticker now. We're gonna plaster that everywhere. Now, dude, so you've built up this thing and now you're helping a lot of other people through coaching programs, right? Especially now, I've been harping on this. That hybrid approach is so important because it has gotten a lot more, and I don't like the word saturated, but there in certain areas it has, and it's normalized and it's still above 2019 levels, but it's normalized and it's more competitive. So the more competitive advantage that you can have to maximize your profit, you need to take ownership of that and go for it. So tell us a little bit about that and how you got into the coaching world. And then maybe we can dive into some of the limiting beliefs, I'll say, that some people have around this whole thing.
Yeah, I think God put me here to coach people. I know that might sound dumb, and a lot of you guys are probably like, "Oh, this guy's just trying to sell a course." Go watch my YouTube channel. Everything that I sell in the course is free online. Go to my YouTube channel and watch it. Don't even join my course. In fact, just go watch all the stuff there. But when I was able to be in a position where I was no longer worried about money and this might have happened for you too, Mike, where money's cool and everything. Anybody that doesn't have it, like myself, at a certain point, like once you get it, there's something else that's missing in your life. Like there just is. I don't know how to explain it. I now found a purpose. Like I was able to help other people do what I was doing. Like I was a dude that didn't graduate high school, that got a job, that was able to make 200 grand after, 10, 15 years of hustling. If I'm able to get somebody that can have not any education, or they've spent their years going to college and they're working at Starbucks as a manager now, and get them to make an extra 5 grand a month, 10 grand a month, that can change their entire life. So for me, I had to get money to start to be able to do the thing that I was uniquely qualified to do, which is give back to the people that need that type of help. So for me, it's like I was able to make money from my properties. Then I got into coaching once I was able to get that steady money coming through, and then helping other people. Now for me, it's just like, I love that, man. It's a drive for me to continue to help people grow in the space. And you don't have to buy a mentorship to do that. There's freaking YouTube University. Go online and just watch all this stuff on YouTube. There's so much information out there to be able to build a successful business, but just so many people aren't willing to do that. And a lot of people need shortcuts. And that's where Mike, you and I, and other people in the space come in to help. So for me, that was kind of like what my journey was like, is helping somebody, watching them win, getting super stoked about it. And the biggest thing, Mike, this might be for you too. When you get a guy or gal that comes in your class and they're like unsure of themselves, they're unsure of their own opportunities, they're unsure of that, and you probably believe them like I do more than they believe in themselves. And then you watch them go from the former self to their newer self that they have to become to be that person that gets what they need to get. Dude, that transition of that gray area within a person, I'm getting goosebumps talking about this right now. Look at this, you guys. I don't know if you can see that. That's where I feel the best at what I do, because I'm able to take them out of their own self, or just guide them along where they're able to get to that person that they're going to become, to be the person that they want to be. Like they're just leaving that former self, almost like a ghost, dude. You can watch it. You know what I'm talking about, Mike? Where you watch somebody just kind of like almost like come out of themselves, and they're like looking at themselves from this different view. It's so powerful, dude. It's really, really cool to watch. And that's what I get pumped about.
If people are
Hi,
like,
that's
when you're
beautiful,
listening
Jesse.
to this, if you listen to any person that's had some levels of success, there is a common thread line through every story. And that's why it's funny. I feel like some people, the keynote I gave in Nashville was literally about this, of like how to change your self-image. Because again, I've coached thousands of people at this point. Until you do that, none of the mechanical stuff matters, because your subconscious will find a way to screw it up. But when you do, oh my God, your life completely changed, and you become a different version of you. You become that next level version of you. And he helped me through this years ago, because he was in this game long before me, doing really hotels with the villas like years ago. And I was still a CPA trying to shift my identity. And it's one of the hardest things to do. But when you do it and you get around people that will support, encourage, and challenge you, oh man, your life goes to a whole new level very quickly.
Yeah. And the cool thing about that too, Mike, is that you're not going to be the same person every year on your birthday. Like you're going to be somebody completely different every single year. And it's crazy when you meet people that you went to high school with and they're the same exact person that they were in 2008, and you meet them in 2024 and they're the same person. Like Mike's not going to be Mike of 2023 and 2024. Like you have this mindset of growing. And I think that you have to be around people, and you have to get past that, and you want to help people. And yes, you have to lose the identity of what your former self was to become the new person. I think that's the most magical piece of the puzzle. And that is the hardest thing to teach anybody. But once you learn it, you can never be untaught. And that's the coolest thing.
Yeah, because I've seen it so often, right? And it's just like, it's that thing. It's just, you got to believe you can be the new you long enough to become it. And I think what I was going to say is that I think that's why so many people, once they make it and you go bankrupt, their stuff happens, you can always make it, is because that the idea of you that you have is the you that has made it. So the moment your reality no longer matches that, you're like, well, I'm just going to go back to the reality where I have made it, because that's who I am as a person.
Yeah, I got a question for you. Did anybody in your family growing up tell you that you could do anything you wanted to do if you put the time and energy to do that?
Yes and no.
Okay, you just gave me a double-ended answer. Mike, did your parents tell you that you can do anything you want to do if you wanted
My
to?
parents did, yeah.
Got it. Okay. The reason why I'm asking that is because my mom used to always tell me when she was tucking me to bed at night, she would say that we would say prayers, and she would say, you could do anything you want to do if you spend the time and energy to do it. Literally would tell me that every time. So it's like burned into my brain. I tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, you guys can literally do anything you want. You just have to like start to believe that. I think that was like an innate thing that my mom gave me by just saying words that I started to believe, that eventually over time, because this might sound crazy and maybe a little bit narcissistic, but I always knew when I was younger that I was going to do something to help people. Like I just always knew that. Like it was in me. Like I knew I was going to be able to do something cool. I don't know if that was you, Mike, or if that was you, E. Did you guys feel that early on? Did you guys feel that like
It's
you were
funny,
going to
I
do something?
always was fascinated with money, and I always assumed someday I would be successful, and then I was gonna be a teacher, and I always just assumed I'd be some college professor when I got older. But when I was a kid, I always thought I was gonna be a stockbroker just because I thought it was cool. Because my parents were super hardworking, very blue collar. Money wasn't really talked about, I didn't know much about it, but I was like, "Oh, like, this seems so cool." Like, I wanna be not the Wolf of Wall Street, but just, like, in the game and, like, knowing how money worked and everything. But
Are
I
you sure you
always
don't want to be like, you don't want to be this guy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was not in sales. I just figured I'd be, like, trading stocks all day and making a bunch of money or something, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I always wanted to teach, and the thing and I'm assuming some of the listeners on here have that calling too, and the only thing that I'll say is you can't teach what you don't have, and a mentor of mine called me out on that very early. He was like, "That's great, but you gotta go fix you first. Then you can help other people fix themselves." Because it feels good to help people intrinsically. Like as humans, it just does. But if your stuff isn't aligned yet, you got to do some work on you. And that's the tough part, right? That's where the real work is.
Yeah. 100%. What about you, E? Did you feel like you were going to do something your whole life? Were you like, I'm going to do it?
Yeah.
Even when you're
No, I've always wanted, and that's when I left. So when I left Sardinia for the first time, where my parents shipped me away, I was 14 going on 15, and I come back from a summer camp. And I met a bunch of kids from Rome. So I grew up in Sardinia, in Cagliari, which is a very small town. And I met these kids from Rome, and they were like from the good society of Rome, right? So they talked about art. They all spoke multiple languages. At the time, I didn't speak English. I just spoke Italian and not very well. And so it's just like I came home and I told my parents, I'm like, I need to live, like, I need to go somewhere else. And they're like, why? I'm like, because I can't stay here. Because I'm going to become, and so many of my friends
how old
still
were you?
live 14.
14.
And so that's why I started becoming becoming an exchange student and everything else. But I'm like, I've always wanted this bigger life. And the thing is just like when I was saying earlier is like, you can't do whatever you want, but there was always like a little asterisk. It's because my family's always been very opinionated. So it was always like, you can do whatever you want as long as
But
we as long as we agree with it, or as long
yeah,
as it's in line with certain things. And that's what it's really has had to do. A lot of my personal growth and my personal change in life has been that. There's being comfortable being who I want to be and not apologizing for my greatness and my dreams and my aspirations. Which again, though, it's a work in progress, and
yeah,
it comes easier as you surround yourself with people that are also really flexing that I don't care muscle. I do whatever I want. Because when you see it in other people, you're like, okay, well, I know Mike. I know Mike before he started using that muscle, and look at him now. I'm like, okay, so I can do it too. I know Jesse, and like I knew Jesse, and when you tell your stories, I'm like, I see you, right? Like I see you in the back of the wagon with a velvet seat, and I'm like my stories are a little bit different, but they have the same flavor to it. I'm like, I can be that, right? So yeah, I would love to ask you a question because you seem like you do a lot of things, right? And you have kids and whatnot, businesses, mentees, and whatever not. How do you cultivate balance in your life?
that is one of the most difficult things for me to do. And Mike, you probably are good at this. I feel like I watch you, and I think your wife's in the business. My wife is not in the business, which is a different scenario. I am such a driven person that I have to hold myself back sometimes and really say, hey, I got to spend time with my kids. Like I'll sit in this room that I just put together right now and do work. Like I'll work. I'll go hang out with the kids. We'll go watch TV. We'll relax. We'll do the thing. And then I'm sitting there getting on my phone. So I have to like constantly stop myself. In fact, this is a conversation I have with my therapist every week is like, how do I put myself in a position where now we're time blocking stuff in my calendar? Like I know we need to go do this thing. A date night needs to happen this week. I'm spending time with my kids playing baseball doing this day. Like I have to actually put those things in my calendar to do it. Because if not, I'll just work. And to be honest with you, I think that there's a trade-off. And this is just my opinion on this. I think when you're going to do something great or you're going to do something sustainable over time, there's going to be a trade-off. And that might be spending a little bit less time with your kids. That might be spending a little bit less time with your wife. That's just me personally. I haven't figured that out yet. It's a constant struggle that I'm learning to deal with. And Mike, if you found a solution for that, please tell me because I've been working on it for quite some time. And I'm around these high level people that say the same thing, but they've been able to carve out a way where they've kind of been able to give that time back. And I'm learning that now, after doing this for years and, being on my own from the W-2 job in 2020 is when I left, August 16, 2020 at 2:47 p.m. You guys, that's when I put my notice in. 37 seconds too, by the way.
That's when Jesse was born. That like, yeah, but it waited this much. It was this tall when it came.
Yeah. You know how they say most men are, they live to 25. What's that saying? It's like most men live to the age of 70, but their dreams die at 25 or something
But they
like
die
that.
at 25. Yeah.
Yeah, I was born on August 16th, 2020 at 2:47 p.m. So there it is, guys. Mike, have you figured that out?
So I am wired very similarly. And what you just said has made a huge difference. So I live, and Eve will attest to this, and we just recorded a podcast with our buddy. I am very difficult to get in touch with a lot of times. And I do that intentionally because I force myself to live off of my calendar now. Because like you, I like what I'm doing and I'm very obsessive. So even last night, right? I'm working on another side project I can't talk about yet, but really excited about it. And I cranked till like 1:30 in the morning. And then I'm like, what am I doing? Okay. I get back, like reel it in. But there's time blocks. Like today, we're recording this on a Thursday. So after this, I've got a 6-month review with my assistant. I've got a 30-minute marketing call, and then I'm home and I'm unplugged for the night. And I coach my son's lacrosse team on Thursdays, but I put it in my calendar and I force myself to stick to it. I Just like you though, I have to force myself to not look at this. Like if we're watching a movie or whatever, don't check my Slack, don't check Stripe, don't check, like just stop. Just stop. And am I perfect with it? No. But that's why I talk so much about this, because this air quotes success can become addicting. And my biggest fear, I know I will do great things. I know I will have success financially, and we're on a great trajectory. I figured out the money piece. What I don't want to happen is to get to the end of the road and then look my kids in the face or my wife in the face and be like, yeah, I dominated this one area, but I totally screwed up in all these other areas. I want the balanced life. And so that's why I get super intentional with how I structure my weeks. And, Danny's here now that you work with as well. And I had him like follow me around last week or 2 weeks ago. And I have these blocks where I'm like, okay, I want to take better care of my body. So I go to this dry needling physical therapy place on this day, and I golf during this time, and just creating there. I don't believe in balance. I believe in work-life integration and designing my perfect week. So like I like to work. I like to work on this stuff. I really don't do much on the property side anymore, in full transparency. It's like maybe an hour every other week. Like I've built a team around that. They're great. It's pretty much on autopilot. I love the coaching and this stuff. So this is where I spend most of my time. But I force myself to unplug, but there's always waves. Like, you just ran a big event leading up to Nashville or leading up to your event. There's a lot of imbalance. There's a lot of long days and a lot of planning and coordinating and everything else. Like, so there's ebbs and flows to these seasons. And it's just remembering to appreciate the small moments. If you're in a big, grind season, to carve out that 10 minutes to just. One thing I believe is my son gets more out of me being fully present with him for 10 minutes and having a conversation or playing than an hour together when I'm half there on my phone. So if I'm there, be present, and he will get way more out of that 10 minutes than if it was an hour of me with my attention in 25 different places. I think a lot of people juggle with that.
Yeah, my wife said that same thing to me the other day. She's like, go ask the kids if you're home or you're here. Ask them how they respond to that. And I was like, that was fucking good.
That's a powerful question.
Yeah. And I was like, damn, like she's right. And the kids are going to say, dad's home, which I'm present, or dad's here. Two totally different things. And that right there just like really got me, because I was like, damn, they're right. They're going to say dad's here and not dad's home. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think there's not enough men that talk about this stuff, like just balancing the things out.
They're real things, I mean, because again,
yeah,
like we can all, and I think that's what it's so corrupted about the American dream, is the fact that like the reality of the American dream, it's a corrupt dream. It's a dream where there is no health and there is no thing. There is money, but the stereotypical cartoonish drawing of an American businessman is this businessman that has this vein popping over here, and he's yelling and screaming, and he's red in the face, and he's kind of overweight, and he's just like has multiple families, multiple wives, and he's just like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
That is not at all what I want. Like, that's not at all what I want. Like, in any way, shape, or form of the shades of it. Like, there is no part of it that interests me outside of making money. And so I'll take this part of it and leave the rest.
I got a question for Mike right now.
Go for it.
You're absolutely right, E. Like you're 100% on that. When I think of like American success, I think of that with like a white picket fence, a dude holding his phone, yelling at somebody, saying, "Don't park across the street from my house," and then having all those thoughts. Mike, I almost feel like successes that I make that I'm able to do, like the summit that we just killed at. We had, 600 people there. I feel like that didn't even happen because I was just so like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I'm being super serious right now. Like, I feel like that was just like a dream and it's just
It's a
gone.
blur.
I didn't get a chance to actually like celebrate it. I didn't get a chance to sit on stage and like take a deep breath and take that in for a minute. Like, it's just like, what's the next thing now? And I have to spend time decompressing and actually soaking. And I kind of did. Every year after the summit, I go to Malibu with my family, my mom, everybody comes, we hang out, we just like relax. But it's so hard for me to, Mike, maybe this for you too, or Eden, maybe this for you too. We've been able to build some pretty cool stuff, but not actually taking a moment to like express to yourself, like, damn, I've been able to do this. It's almost like, where's the next step? What's the next step? We hit the million. Now let's do the 1.2. Let's go to this. We just got 600 people. Now we want to get 800. It's this crazy thing. So have you been able to stop time in that sense and really just kind of soak in and acknowledge the accomplishments? Or is it just like myself where it's like, I'm having problems still even, addressing the success that you have and just always wanting more to a certain degree? Do you get that, Mike?
So I'll say two things to that. And even piggybacking a little bit before, as far as being able to create more balance and unplug, building a really good team. Like, again, on the properties, I'm very removed. Now on the coaching side, we have like 26 people on the team at this point. They don't even need me there. Right. And realizing that now, and E knows he's in there, he's on the team. Like, we've got a deep bench of A players. And so remembering to let go of some of that control, stay in my lane, which is basically just get attention for the brand and create content, which is what I like to do. I don't need to be there. And I think this will relate to a lot of even folks growing their STR, MTR businesses. At a certain point, when you start building your team, you have a tendency to stay in your comfort zone and keep doing the things that you used to do. Like, oh, I need to check the messages from the guests. I need to check in with the cleaners. No, you don't. That's what you have a team for. I haven't talked to a guest in probably 5 years, literally.
I love that.
Like, you don't need to do that when you have a good team, right? As far as the balance go, or the celebrating wins, I ran the New York Marathon in 2018. I'd never run more than like 3 miles in my life. And when my son was sick, they put a team together for the hospital to run and whatever. And I was like, okay, I want to run for my son. So I did it, trained for months. Amazing experience, very challenging for not being a runner. And I remember crossing the finish line and I felt great. And then 5 minutes later, I had the exact feeling that you did, where I was like, what's next? And I had a call with my coach a couple days later. I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I just did something that I didn't even think was possible. And I'm already on to the next thing. And she said something very interesting to me. She said, you want to take it in and enjoy it. But as humans, we are hardwired goal seeking organisms. So we are most fulfilled when we have something to chase and something to fulfill. So she's like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just embracing it. And so you take it in for a minute, but then you want to set the next goal. And so that's why when I'm coaching or even coaching myself, I always ask why behind the goal, because I know I will figure out a way to hit the goal. Like, I just will. I'm just wired that way. So I want to make sure before I commit to that thing that there's a reason why. Because to your point, great. You hit that first 100K and then you hit 1 million, and then you hit 5 million, and then you hit 10 million. And then you're like, okay, there's always going to be more commas. Like, it's infinite amount of numbers, right? But what's the reason behind it? And what I found, like you were alluding to before, giving back through coaching, but also now through philanthropy, I found has been a huge driver for me. Because at a certain point, the money doesn't, you lose steam because it's not as motivating. Like, I've got the house, I've got the cars, I have an amazing lifestyle. Like, all of that is awesome. But now, I found an organization that I want to get behind that rescues kids from human trafficking, that like, I know every time I send money every month to them, I get reports of like the missions that they're doing and the lives that they're helping and all these things. I don't really talk about this stuff publicly, but maybe this will inspire somebody. But to me, the bigger I go, the more I can do that. And also the more lives I can impact on the coaching side, but also on my team. Like if you talk to anybody on my team, they'll all tell you like my life gets better when I'm around Mike. And I don't say that egotistically. I mean, it constantly makes me push to keep leveling up so I can create more opportunity and help people level up and push themselves. And so I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's also good to have people around you. Like I got off stage in Nashville and Beth was like, I need you to take a minute here and like soak this in. Like, look at this. Look at what you guys have built. Like, this is amazing. But to your point, like you're in it when you're there and you're just going and going and going. So having those people around you that are like, soak this in for a second and then recharge and go do it again.
Yeah, it's freaking crazy. You just brought something up right now that I really like. So there's not many people that have that same frame of thought when it comes to coaching other people or leadership. I think leadership is like a skill that not a lot of people have the right skill. And there's two different types of leaderships. And I think you probably fall in the same bucket that I do. There's transactional leaders that hire people and they're going to do a job, whether that's A, B, C, they show up at 8 a.m., they leave at 5 p.m. That's a transactional. They're just there to do the job, the skills and whatever. You have transactional and then you have transformational. And that's what you are, is where you're investing in that person that is now going to become that exact same thing we talked about before, where they're leaving their former self, they're watching the ghost come out. They're now embedded in Mike's vision, in his entire, what he wants to do, where he wants to go. They're invested in the growth and you're probably investing money into them, whether that's, training or new skills to acquire. Like that's what a transactional, or not a transactional, but a transformational leader does. They transform people from where they are and they're embedded in that company to see your vision and see it through. And I think that's cool because again, most leaders are transactional. I'm going to hire this person, they do these jobs. So it's cool to hear somebody else that has that same exact mentality. I wish you guys were at my summit so you could have saw what our team is doing. And Danny, I think, is behind
I got the cliff notes from Danny.
Yeah. Our team is just, man, I invest so much into them. I really, really do, because I want them to become better people, obviously become better workers, and actually care about the mission that we have at this business to help people better their lives and to do more things. And they're in that. They feel it. They know it. In fact, if I lost all my money, I guarantee you some of them would probably work for free. I'm not even kidding. Like they would, because I know that they see what goes behind the scenes, and just investing in people I think is so important, especially when it comes to leadership. So glad you brought that up, man.
That was honestly in Nashville. That is one of the things that I'm the most proud of our team and our booth. Is the fact that we all, and this is a core tenet of mine, and it's a core tenet of Mike, we serve from love and just making everybody better. And our booth just was oozing just love and care. And we care. Like I care about any and every soul that I meet at all times, and really being present with people. And our team is that. Like literally, Jesse, anybody that you meet from our team in Nashville is that. Whatever you're talking to us for a second, whatever you're asking us about a listing, whatever you're asking us about how to make things better, how VAs, whatever question is, it's 100% attention, love and care. How can I leave you better than I found you in this brief conversation? May that be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. How can I make you better? And serve through love. Whatever happens, whatever comes to it, it doesn't even matter to us. It's just like, is your life better? Great. Do you feel more seen and understood? Great. Do you need a hug? Great. We're good? Perfect. Let's move on.
Most likely you're going to be uncomfortable because I'm going to challenge the hell out of you to level up.
Yes, that's also true.
Yeah, I love that.
It's love. Like, you know what I mean? Like real love is challenging people to, like we're saying, becoming the best version of you. I love you more if I challenge you because I see greatness in you that you're choosing to not air out, versus the people that are in your life that let you be great in silence.
Yeah. You're going to call them out and be like, look, I believe in you more than you probably believe in yourself. I
and
feel
your
like
whole family. Like I believe
Yeah.
in you more than your whole family believes in you.
Yeah. I love that. That's super rad.
Damn, dude. Well, I will say this is one of my favorite podcasts that we've done over the last 4 or 5
Probably
years.
the longest recording. They were done.
This is
Yeah.
this is what Mike says after every podcast. Mike, don't worry. I used to do podcasts. I said the same thing too, bro. It's cool.
No,
Not gonna hurt
actually,
my
he
feelings.
has never said that. I
I don't
give
think
it to you.
I've ever said that to anybody. But anyway, this was
Uh,
awesome, man. I really appreciate it. But before we get into the last question, where can the listeners connect with you and see all the cool stuff that you have going on?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. You can check me out on YouTube. You just type in Jesse Vasquez, I should pop up there. Or you can go to Instagram at the real Jesse Vasquez. That's the name I had to pick because there's so many Hispanic Jesse Vasquez in the world. So I had to be the real one. But I appreciate you guys. This has been one of my favorite podcasts that I've jumped on and done as well. So it's just, I think that we have a lot of similar energy, which is fantastic. And I know the audience is going to love this podcast. There's really, really good stuff. And it's personal. This was a personal podcast where we were sharing our own issues live on the air with hundreds of thousands of people that can hear it. So hopefully somebody gets something from it.
Love it, man. Well, the last question that we ask all of our guests is, what is your number one secret to success with short-term or midterm rentals?
Putting customers first. I think that is 100% it's hospitality at the end of the day. And if you do not have that as a forefront of your business, you are not going to have a business in the next year. And hands down, the most important piece of the puzzle. So think about it like a business and put hospitality, put your clients first with everything. Money will follow, but do that one thing.
So good, bro. Well, thank you for coming on here. We will definitely do a part 2 at some point, but for listeners out there, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. You're probably going to want to listen to this one a couple times and take some notes, but this was a doozy. So I hope you guys have an amazing week, and we will talk to you soon. Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.